I've talked about this before, but I need to mention it again for context in this video. As radio became more and more popular in the 1920s, there was a big shift in design. Radios from the amateur period of the early 1920s looked like big pieces of machinery and were eyesores. But as radio went mainstream, this began to change, and radios were fitted into pieces of furniture so that they could look nice in a living room. I had noticed this trend before, but I've finally found some articles from early 1924 that directly address it, so I had to share them. The first one talks about this furniturization of radio, and the second one is about trying to get women more into radio. And that's relevant because women were generally not into radio in the amateur period, and combining radios and furniture was partly to appeal more to them. Alright, so let's get into the articles. The Aristocracy of Radio Receivers. Radio Broadcast, January 1924. While there are still in use plenty of unprepossessing and shy crystal receivers, and many ham sets composed of little more than the conventional rubber boot and tin can, an aristocracy of receiving sets is emerging from the common horde of inductances and capacities, tubes and jacks and whatnot. The most casual and disinterested observer at the recent New York radio show was struck by the many fine examples of receiver design and resplendent cabinet work. Many an enthralled amateur stopped before these beautiful sets, lost in the last stages of what the newspaper reporters loved to call open-mouthed wonder. The radio manufacturers have found that there is a market for self-contained sets, well built and finished with all the care of a sonorous piano. The perfection of the loop antenna and the wide use of amplification, radio, and audio have made self-contained sets possible. So, with the aid of the cabinet manufacturer, certain types of radio receivers have come to be designed more as pieces of furniture, to decorate fine rooms, than as rough and not too efficient pieces of experimental apparatus, curiosities which had their proper place in some inconspicuous corner, where a mess of wires, tools, and parts was not objectionable. Many of the receivers made for discriminating purchasers require an outside antenna and ground, but generally have their operating batteries and tubes installed in the cabinet itself. Several sets have been built which operate from loop antennas attached to or within the cabinet. There are deluxe receivers large and small. One may purchase small cabinets which will blend perfectly with library furniture, or go nicely on a table. There is one receiver built in a standard unit of a sectional bookcase, another which looks precisely like a T-wagon and can be used as one. Perhaps the most popular type of expensive and decorative receiver is built-in cabinets very much like those used for phonographs. These types range from the rather modest small size shown in an accompanying illustration to the large console types with rich and elaborate cabinet work. Many of these receiver cabinets are useful as well as ornamental. The most unusual and striking example is the T-wagon type, but sets are being built into fine tables, which have obvious uses. Fine hardware is being used on these deluxe sets. One receiver has heavily nickeled piano hinges along the full length of its cover. The advantage of this refinement will be appreciated by those who have labored long and impatiently to replace screws which have worked loose on small, cheap cover hinges. Deluxe receivers have a sound appeal to any radio prospect who does not want to experiment with radio, but who wishes a receiver, attractive in appearance and efficient and dependable in operation. As Christmas presents, many of these receivers would make rich and unusual gifts. Making radio attractive to women. Radio broadcast, January 1924. If you saw a receiving set installed in the living room of your own home in such a way that it harmonized with the furnishings of the room, seemed to go well there, as we say, would you be any more inclined to want it than if you saw it against the background of a lot of shelves packed with electrical equipment? Donald G. Stevens of a radio sales company in Washington believes you would, and therefore he has adopted a plan which has been very little developed in the field of radio merchandising. It took some courage to start such a venture, as the outlay necessary was considerable, but he was convinced that the ability to realize just how radio fits and looks in the home would, in time, prove a great inducement to purchasers. Accordingly, he furnished his place of business not like a store at all. He got away from shelves and counters, replacing these with furniture in the fashion of a parlor or a drawing room. He put a big, comfortable davenport against one wall, and along the other side of the room, a desk and a table. In the middle, he placed one of the long tables that are so often seen in modern homes. He did not crowd his quarters, but selected his furniture with taste and discretion. As will be seen from the photograph, there are enough chairs, tables, and desks in the room, and enough pictures on the walls to secure the desired effect. Besides, 3 or 4 different types of furniture are provided in order that each prospective purchaser may pick out pieces resembling his own as much as possible. I have tried to make it so that the prospective customers who come in here, especially the women, do not have to draw entirely upon their imaginations, said Mr. Stevens. My idea is to have enough variety to suggest the corner or center of almost any living room today. Justification for this novel plan of merchandising seems to be ample, for the sales of the establishment during the second month of its existence were 1/4 larger than those of the first, while sales during the third month nearly tripled those of the second. It's a satisfaction to me that we have been able to prove to the public that the radio business can stand alone, remarked Mr. Stevens. We sell radio and nothing else, and I suppose it's because of that very thing that the public will come here when it won't go to some other places. Customers must realize that since we deal in nothing but radio, we know this work as no one who manages it as one of many sidelines can ever do. If more and more dealers would go into the strictly radio business instead of making it a sideline, public confidence would grow steadier all the time. Radio has a special demand of its own, he continued, just as the talking machine or the moving picture has. Some people think the talking machine will disappear with the increase of radio's popularity, but that's a mistaken theory. The phonograph will continue in its own sphere, and it's my idea that it will become a sort of vocal library, preserving voices just as the printed words are preserved in a book, while radio will be a sort of talking daily newspaper.